Yo, JD here, Tyrrell Nevis, and as you can see on F1 2020, once again, as always, but something a little bit different, we have an F1 esports qualifying event, which was very unexpected. I think it just came up yesterday, where everyone was talking about it, or they released it at like midnight or something like that. It's active for an entire month, so the 30 days, and you can see currently on Xbox, as I am right here, the best score is 203,000, and I say score because the actual time of the session you do, like the fastest session time, isn't always the highest score because it's very dependent on how many warnings you've got, if you invalidated this track, if you had to use the flashback, what level of AI you're racing against, and if you're using assists or not. So if you really wanted to get to the top of one of these leaderboards, then you're probably going to have to turn off all the assists and run the 110 AI, because even if you were 2 or 3 seconds faster, you're running with a lower AI, but your total session time is still actually faster than someone else's, you won't get as much score. So you really need to put it on 110, pretty much minimum, if you want to get into the top 10 and qualify for esports. Pretty sure no one can really do it without doing that. So we're at Monza for this. They have done Monza before, and I think that was on 2018. I think they did it on 2018 or maybe 2017. Don't know which one it was, but they have done it before, so a little bit disappointing that they've decided to do a repeat of a track. It would have been nice to do something different, maybe Silverstone or I don't know, something else rather than Monza, because for me, I really do not like Monza. I don't know if I've said that before, but it's kind of on the same level as Bahrain for me in terms of enjoyment and difficulty. It's a track I don't enjoy and I just find really difficult for this exact reason, because I just invalidated, and this is my very, very first run that I did. And I'm not going to show the whole run, I'm going to show you just a few clips, and then I will show you my best full run towards the end of this session. But coming into this, there's something I need to mention as well, because I wasn't aware of this. Now, if you're watching this video now and you haven't tried it yet, make sure that you don't quit the session, because if you quit the session just to view your time, as you can see, another harsh reminder of how difficult this track still is for me, in my opinion. If you quit the session, your fuel will be locked to standard, so make sure you stay in it. But there is a patch along the way as well, upcoming soon, I hope. And also another thing that people do is people do the flashback that actually gains you time on the actual lap time or something like that, which I haven't actually tried myself, which is kind of part of the reason why I haven't done my setups or anything at all, because you just don't know what a good time actually is or anything at all. But yeah, just something to keep in mind if you're going to be attempting this, because it does actually register it, because there's an offline mode, unfortunately. But coming into this now, I did do a few laps, and something I always recommend as well, same if you're doing TT and you're trying to just get faster at the game, to be honest, like even if it doesn't matter what mode you're in, I always encourage people to try not quit straight away. As soon as you've made the first mistake, like I've got a penalty here and I've got the invalidation, and I just still continue on for another couple of laps. It's good to, especially in AI based events like this, it's good to try and get a full run in first, just so you know where you'll roughly go catch any AI, which in this case is Lewis Hamilton, because the scenario is to do a Sebastian Vettel going into there. But in this scenario, so if I can get my words out right, that'd be great. You're Valtteri Bottas, you're trying to catch Lewis Hamilton in P2, and that's the only car you have to overtake. So not a particularly tricky one in terms of the AI navigation, but again, it's always very, very useful just to go through the full event, just so you know what lap times you're aiming for, what's the max lap time that you can do, how difficult the track is, like you can see here. Also how your fuel is used and your ERS, because you're not going to be behind that many people. It's very important to know how much ERS is going to be used per lap, and that is very, very dependent on your setups and just your fuel use and stuff as well, and just your driving style as well, and just how much you like to actually use the overtake button. And see, this is the first time I actually got up behind this AI and a fairly clean overtake, but he was quite hard to get down into turn 1, and the AI are very incredibly annoying on this game. That's why I don't do career mode. I just do not enjoy driving against them at all. And you can see again another warning, but I did restart on that occasion because I pretty much did what I needed to do. I just caught up to Lewis Hamilton, and I knew from then onwards what the fuel usage would be, what the overtake or ERS usage would be. So now we're going to go into my best run that I did. So I now feel proper warmed up. I feel like I've got a good setup on board. I know how much fuel is used per lap, and I'm just trying to always deploy the overtake button in the same way every time. And in terms of this run, obviously it's nowhere near a perfect run because I didn't do that many. I think I did probably about a total of 5 full runs in the absolute total, with probably about 10 or so restarts after like that one or something in the meantime other than that. But there's definitely a lot more time in this, but hopefully it can showcase what a decent run actually is. So going into here, the first lap, I always try and aim for about a 21.0, 21.1. I felt like it was a pretty solid lap. I'm just trying to limit my ERS as much as possible, because the plan is to try and get Lewis Hamilton and then use ERS to then go for a very, very fast lap. Because like I said before, if you get a very quick fastest lap, that gives you a huge boost in points. It gives you a massive boost, and even if your overall session time is actually slower than someone else's ahead of you on the leaderboard, having a faster lap by like 3 or 5 tenths could actually give you a much bigger score than them. So it's very, very important, hence why I'm trying to conserve it as much as I can. In terms of the way of driving this track, for the first corner I try and hook the inside of the right turn of my right wheel. Through here you want to be kissing just both of these, not too much. Up into here, this is a very, very tricky corner. 5th gear down to 4th, then up into 5th very quickly. Use all the curb on the exit, keeping it rich. 4th gear, then up to 5th again. And the track limits in the exit are not too bad by any stretch or means. But you can see the fastest lap we've done so far, the first lap we did was a 20.9. So that was definitely a PB for me. And so far, so good. And you can see when you attack that end of Ascari, make sure the car's straight when you're going over that curb, otherwise it will just spin out on you. And so far, no, it's going fairly nicely. I think the objective for a very, very fast time is to constantly be in the 20s, which is definitely very, very possible, but quite difficult. You can see we do it at 21.0. So I did a purple last and first, but not a purple middle. Going to here again, braking a little bit early, making sure you hook the car on the inside, miss that curb on the left, just kiss it, and then get some very good traction. Stay nice and tight to the right hand side here, and you can see we're starting to approach Lewis Hamilton. So really at the end of lap 49 really is where you want to be getting it. But if you can get the DRS at the end of this lap, then that is an absolute bonus. And you can see again, managing the fuel, just trying to just drive exactly the same way every single lap, because these tyres are the medium tyres. They're pretty durable tyre wear. You don't really have to worry about anything here. The main thing you have to worry about is just your fuel and your ERS usage, which again, as I said before, can be heavily determined on what kind of setup you run. If you run a very, very high downforce, then it's going to be very difficult for you to save any ERS and you go burn a lot more fuel. Whereas if you use a very low downforce, you'll find quite easily find that you'll be saving a lot more fuel and a lot more of the ERS. So, but obviously the downside of that is that you're just not going to be as quick in the corners, which surprisingly you do need to be quick in the corners around this track as well. We can see at the start of that 49, this is probably the closest I've been so far. I've been quite aggressive into here and doing turn 1 very, very nicely, and I managed to get that pretty much perfect every single time. But the corner I didn't get perfect every single time is this one coming up here. This is, for me, this is one of my hardest corners in the game. This one, it's just so difficult. It's so easy to lose the car. But the only thing I can say is that thankfully on this game, it's actually quite a bit easier than last game. Last game, it really could catapult you completely off the track. But this one, it's just much more flatter. But now we have got in the DRS, and this has worked absolutely perfectly because now I don't have to use any of the overtake button. So it's just crucial that I get a good run through here. I was always being quite cautious through the Ascari. I think I always could have gone about a tenth or so quicker every single time along with that first chicane. So I think I could be going about 2 or so tenths faster throughout the whole lap, really, I think, in my opinion. But now I'm getting a little bit of the dirty air, and I think on the better run you'd want to be closer to him so you could make the overtake going down into it. So I'm not going to use any ERS, just trying to save it once again. And this is not 100% optimal because I am going to be held, but going through the corners, hooking that inside very nicely again, getting an absolutely fantastic exit. And now I'm going to deploy my ERS, just hoping that I can get a clean pass, but this is coming with a price. I'm using all of my overtake. I'm just about ahead of him, but the AI have this tendency to just stick it down the inside, and luckily he decides to back out of it. And also that we didn't make contact, because if you make contact and get a warning, you will also lose a lot of points in the event. So this lap is going very, very nicely. The only thing on the perfect run is I probably would want to get him into Parabolica if I could, or just be right behind him, so it'd be a very, very clean pass into turn 1 without having to use that much overtake button at all, because then I'd probably have about 20 odd more percent ERS than I do, because I'm actually quite low in it because I had to really force that overtake. So now it's just about just taking a little bit more risks, because I'm slightly lower on the ERS, so now I'm going to have to take some more risks, because beforehand I wasn't really taking that many risks through the first or the second chicane or Ascari, because those are the 2 easiest places to get a track invalidation. So going through here, I was always very, very good every time, but it's just going through the next chicane. I definitely felt like I left a little bit of time on the table through there, but you can see now got about 10% ERS with 2 laps to go. So yeah, it's not going to really impact my normal lap time that badly, but at the end where you want to be expending all your ERS, then I'm probably going to be losing a good 2 or 3 tenths, or maybe even half a second a lap potentially. Now, if I had 50% now, I think I'd be going 3 to 4 tenths faster than this on this lap so far, because I'm hardly able to use any ERS here. We still got 2 laps of this race to go as well, so that's why it's very important to actually practice the full event first, see where your pace is, and see where you roughly come up towards the AI of Hamilton, and really focus on taking probably more risks in the first part of the race, just so you can get onto the back of him a lot sooner. Then you can make a cleaner overtake, then probably go for a quicker, faster lap, and then you've got more ERS to play with at the end of the race, because then my actual lap time now is starting to suffer. As you can see, I'm always below 10% ERS here. So yeah, the thing that's key is that you have to get the AI in the perfect place, and that's all what it's about. And that's the kind of frustrating thing about these events. I really kind of wish they didn't have the AI, because sometimes in the past, this one's actually quite nice in a way, because you've only got 1 AI to deal with. But in the past, where you have to overtake like 5+ cars, sometimes they crash into each other and it gives you some free space, and sometimes they don't. So a lot of it was really about luck most of the time, because you could be on an absolute worldy first stint and then they don't crash, and then you have to overtake and you lose a second or so. Or you could be on quite a poor first stint, but then they crash and then your overall time will be quicker. So yeah, I kind of don't like how they use the AI. I really wish they would just forget that and they just give you 5 laps around a certain track, and it's just your total fastest time around those things. But you know, I know what they're trying to achieve, because e-drivers are trying to be e-sport drivers and to show the overtaking, but I don't think the AI are consistent enough to really make it completely fair. But moving on to the last lap now, you can see my lap time has suffered as a result of the lack of ERS, and you can see I am taking more risks in this last part of the event, whereas in the first part I just didn't really take as many as I really could have, because then I could have got past them sooner. So now I'm just trying to just limit the damage as much as possible. It's going to be very, very difficult to catch Leclerc, but I think probably I wouldn't be surprised if some people do catch him. On PC especially, I would probably expect the very, very top people like Jarno Otmir, Beresnay or Rasmussen, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually caught him. I think I could probably get within 3 seconds. I think we can gain another about 2 or 3 seconds more on this, I think, if we just had a cleaner run. Because you never know how much of the extra ERS advantage would have given me towards the end of this race, as I'm deploying the last of it now. But normally once you get below 10%, that's when your engine starts to not be as powerful. So coming off Parabolica here, let's see what lap time is going to be. It felt like a fairly decent run, quite a clean run, but you can see my lap time has suffered in those last 3 laps. I think I was losing a good 3 or so, 4 tenths a lap just alone through there. But I felt pretty solid, pretty good. I didn't do too many runs here, but luckily I didn't quit out, because you're about to see at the end of the session when I go back in of what this glitch unfortunately is. But I think that was a good showcase. I think that was a pretty solid time, but as always, I will probably do another video where I actually improve my time. There will be people sweating this night and day, and they will be beating this pretty comfortably. So beforehand, the number 1 time was 203,000, and now you're about to see our lap times, 20.7, and the total session time. You can see we've done 209,000, which I think for a first effort is really not too bad whatsoever. But you can see already been beaten by Mr. ADT Kowalski. He is probably, I would say he's probably the fastest man on raw pace on Xbox, especially in time trial. He is very, very good, and he's got the world record at this track as well, I think. So I know he's going to be very, very difficult to beat, but to be honest, I wasn't really that far off him. So for a first attempt, really, I was actually quite happy. But you can see now, this is the thing you suffer with. If you go back in, you can't change the fuel, which is, yeah, pretty crazy. But I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching my channel as always. Hopefully you learned something, and I will catch you very, very soon. Peace.